right now, your digital workspace is, well, probably costing you about 10 hours a week in completely invisible manual labor.
Oh, easily. At least 10 hours.
Right. You know the drill. You copy a client's name from an email, you paste it into a spreadsheet, then you open a totally different app to create a task, and then jump into yet another app to draft a document.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It really is.
Yeah.
Basically functioning as a human router for your own data. And for you, the learner listening to this, someone who really wants to be well-informed and optimally efficient without drowning in information overload, that friction is just incredibly frustrating.
It is. I mean, it's the defining bottleneck of modern knowledge work, really. We have access to the most powerful applications in human history, but because they often refuse to speak to one another natively, our ideas just become completely fragmented.
Exactly.
We end up with this chaotic warehouse of half-finished projects and disconnected nodes.
Which is exactly why we are plunging into today's stack of sources. Our mission for this deep dive is to basically extract the ultimate blueprint for turning those scattered productivity apps into a unified, automated, and AI-powered digital brain.
Sounds ambitious.
Oh, it is. We've pulled together a really fascinating mix of materials today. We've got deep technical documentation, early 2026 software release patch notes, some highly detailed transcripts from productivity YouTubers, and a massive curated GitHub repository list.
That's quite the stack.
Yeah, we are tracking the evolution of tools like Notion, Workflowy, Zapier, Alteryx, and Improve-It.
And, looking through this stack, a really clear narrative starts to emerge. We are watching this transition from static digital filing cabinets to active orchestrating systems.
Right.
But to understand how we actually get to autonomous digital brains, we first have to look at how we capture raw human thought.
Let's start right at that foundation then, the collection of ideas. The sources highlight two fundamentally opposed philosophies for this, starting with Workflowy.
Workflowy.
Yeah. Looking at the 2026 reviews, Workflowy is described as this Zen-like, infinite, zoomable bullet list. It practices this really aggressive minimalism.
Aggressive is the right word for it.
Right. You open it, and there are no ribbons, no complex menus, just a blank page and a single bullet point.
Yeah, and the defining mechanic there is that zoom feature. Mechanically, it operates on this strict hierarchy of plain text.
How did that look in practice?
Well, say you might have a parent bullet labeled product launch with nested child bullets underneath for marketing, engineering, and budget.
Okay, pretty standard outliner stuff.
Right, but when you click the bullet for marketing, the rest of the entire outline just disappears. Marketing instantly becomes the top of your screen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it creates this artificial tunnel vision. From a cognitive perspective, it entirely removes the visual noise of your other responsibilities. It forces immediate focus.
I mean, that sounds brilliant for pure distraction-free drafting, though the sources do point out some constraints.
Always a catch, right?
Always. The free tier is quite strict. It caps you at 250 bullets a month.
Oh, wow. A heavy user will burn through that in, a couple of days?
Easily. Unlocking unlimited bullets runs $4.99 a month, or $49 a year. But digging into their early 2026 patch notes, they are actually trying to expand their utility without breaking that minimalist philosophy.
What kind of updates are we talking about?
Well, they finally implemented numbered lists.
No way, really?
Yeah, it's been a massive community request for, years. They also added a cross-tab drag-and-drop function and an email to Workflowy feature so you can, capture thoughts on the fly without even opening the app.
That's actually super handy.
Plus a calendar view specifically for what they call found dates and a few aesthetic updates like chocolate matcha themes.
Okay, so they are essentially just refining the microscope. It remains a tool dedicated to isolating and examining individual strands of thought.
Exactly.
But then, the source material pivots to Notion, which represents a completely divergent philosophy.
Oh, it's the total opposite. If Workflowy is the microscope isolating a single cell, Notion is the sprawling laboratory dashboard monitoring the entire facility.
I like that analogy.
The official documentation really emphasizes extreme structure and heavy integration with the outside web. Notion utilizes a service called iframely to embed live external content from, I think it said, over 1,900 different domains.
Yeah, that's right.
You just type a command like embed or specific blocks like tweet or maps, and it isn't just pasting a static image or a link. It is rendering a live interactive widget right inside your workspace.
And it applies that exact same structural flexibility to how you organize your own data, too. We have a transcript in the stack from a YouTube creator named Alex, and he demonstrates this fantastic architectural trick.
Database thing.
Yeah, instead of having data scattered across 10 different pages, he just types database and selects link to database.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because this is where people usually get so confused with Notion. He isn't creating a new database, he's pulling a window into an existing one, right?
Yeah, exactly the right way to think about it. He is creating a viewport. Once he links to that master database, he can stack multiple custom views of it on a single unified dashboard page.
So like seeing the same data through different lenses.
Precisely. He might have a board view tracking the status of tasks, and then right below it, a table view showing just the financial metrics of those exact same tasks.
Well, that's clever.
And then he just deletes the default views he doesn't need. The result is this highly customized, super powerful control center built entirely out of linked data.
Okay, look, I'm looking at these two extremes, right? The isolated text of workflowy and the massive structural weight of Notion. And I see a glaring issue here.
What's that?
Doesn't using both of these tools simultaneously just create more data silos? I mean, if my brainstorm is in one app and my project tracker is in another, haven't I just defeated the entire purpose of being organized?
This raises an important question, and honestly, it's the exact friction point that derails most productivity systems. The reality of human cognition is that different types of thinking just require different interfaces.
Right, a blank page versus a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Rapid, unstructured brainstorming kind of suffocates inside a rigid database. Conversely, managing a multi-stage marketing campaign with external assets is, well, it's impossible in a plain text bulleted list.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare.
So the solution is not forcing yourself to choose one tool for everything. The solution is building a bridge so the tools communicate seamlessly behind the scenes.
Which naturally leads us to how we actually build that bridge without, resorting to manual copy pasting. The first major mechanism our sources cover is Zapier.
Ah, good old Zapier.
Yep. The basic integration outlined here is using Zapier to automatically turn updated items in your Notion database into new bullet points.
Mechanically, Zapier just executes. It constantly monitors your Notion dashboard for a specific trigger, let's say a project status changing to active. When it detects that trigger, it executes an action, automatically generating a corresponding bullet in your workflowy outline. It basically ensures your daily, distraction-free brainstorming space always reflects your high-level project commitments.
But, and this is big, but the documentation immediately hits us with a pretty significant limitation. On Zapier's free plan, this entire process relies on something called polling.
Right?
Zapier essentially knocks on Notion's door every 15 minutes to ask, hey, did anything change?
And that introduces a very distinct lag. If you update a project while you're on a call, and then you immediately switch to workflowy to start brainstorming, the data might not be there yet.
Yeah, you are left just waiting for the next 15-minute polling cycle to complete.
That's frustrating.
It feels incredibly archaic for 2026. And the friction gets even worse when you look at the advanced workarounds detailed in our sources. We have a guide here from Notion VIP explaining that Zapier actually cannot natively update Notion relation properties.
Oh yeah, this is a major structural hurdle. Relational databases are basically the backbone of complex Notion setups.
Right, tying things together.
Yeah, imagine you have a database for incoming form submissions and a totally separate database for countries. You want your system to automatically link a new submission from, say, John Smith to the Canada entry in the countries database.
Seems simple enough.
You'd think so, but because of API limitations, Zapier's native user-friendly modules simply fail to execute that specific link.
So the workaround Notion VIP provides is, it's genuinely intimidating for a casual user. You have to use a code by Zapier action to run a custom JavaScript Pantheon request directly to the Notion API.
Yeah, it gets deeply technical very fast.
You are required to generate an internal integration token, manually feed the script the specific 32-character page IDs, and write JSON code just to link two items together.
It's a lot.
And we aren't just talking about personal notes here either. Another source in the stack highlights how Zapier natively triggers workflows in a software called Approve-It.
That Approve-It example is of vital context here. Approve-It manages human-in-the-loop approvals. We are talking about critical business logic triggering expense requests, contract reviews, or compliance checks based on actions happening in Google Sheets, Salesforce, or Gmail.
Okay, so high stakes.
Exactly. If an employee submits an expense in Salesforce, Zapier routes it to Approve-It, which then pings a manager for authorization.
But okay, let's unpack this. Combining the 15-minute polling delay with the necessity of writing raw JavaScript to patch together relational databases that represents a very messy, low-code middle ground. It is incredibly clunky.
I agree, but the clunkiness is really a symptom of transition. We are trying to force static, storage-first databases to behave like active, event-driven applications.
Square peg, round hole.
Exactly. Polling is inefficient because it requires the system to constantly expend energy asking a question that usually has a negative answer. The system needs to stop asking and start listening.
And that brings us to the massive leap forward outlined in our sources. If polling is repeatedly calling a store every 15 minutes to ask if your package arrived, our next technology is the store texting you the very second the package is placed on the counter. We are talking about webhooks.
Yes, webhooks. They fundamentally alter the speed and architecture of a digital system. Instead of Zapier pulling data on a schedule, a webhook pushes data the millisecond an event occurs.
So no more waiting.
None. It is instantaneous. Zero command.
The YouTube transcript from Dmitry Panichi in our stack captures this perfectly. He is practically vibrating with excitement over Notion's late 2024 update, which finally allowed users to attach webhooks directly to native clickable buttons inside a document.
His enthusiasm is completely justified, honestly, because of the mechanical shift it represents. Previously, triggering an automation from inside a note-taking app meant changing a drop-down menu from to-do to done, and then just hoping your external software pulled it soon.
Right.
By attaching a webhook to a button, the user action becomes immediate, deliberate, and final.
Panichi walks through a wild content creation example to prove the point. He has this meeting notes page in Notion. At the top, he builds a single button labeled Add to Calendar.
Okay.
When he clicks it, that button fires a webhook payload to an automation platform called Make.com. The webhook carries all the context of the meeting.
Like the notes and action items.
Exactly. Make.com instantly parses that data, generates a sequence of related calendar tasks exactly 5 days into the future, automatically creates the necessary subtasks, and even assigns them to the correct team members. It happens in the blink of an eye.
It completely eliminates the manual labor of project setup. But his second example regarding invoicing that is where you see true system orchestration.
Oh, the client portal thing.
Yes, he builds 3 specific buttons inside his Notion client portal. Create, send, and void.
Right. So clicking send fires a webhook that instantly generates a $200 invoice for a client. I think you named him Jake Browning.
Yep, Jake Browning.
It routes the request through Stripe or PayPal, triggers an email to the client with a payment link, and simultaneously sends a notification payload to a specific Slack channel so the team knows the bill went out.
Just from one click.
One click. But the void button is what really caught my eye. If Panichi makes a typo, he clicks void. That button fires a specific webhook that reaches all the way back into the financial application, locates the exact invoice ID, and nullifies the URL so the client can't pay a broken bill.
That capability reaching into a third-party financial environment to recall an action purely from a button press inside a text editor is profound. It means the text editor is no longer just a place to store words, right? It has become the remote control for the entire business.
But I do have to push back here a little. This sounds incredibly powerful, but if you're spending your day mashing create, send, and void buttons inside Notion, aren't you essentially just replacing keyboard data entry with mouse button mashing? You are still the one manually driving the machine.
What's fascinating here is the psychological shift. When you are doing data entry, you are functioning as a clerk. Your brain is occupied by the mechanical transfer of information from box A to box B.
Okay, fair.
When you press a button that simultaneously handles invoicing, emailing, and team notification, you are functioning as an orchestrator. The webhook handles the mechanical labor, freeing your cognitive load to make high-level decisions. You are no longer moving the dirt, you are driving the excavator.
Okay, so you are the orchestrator. But at a certain point, a business or a project scales beyond the physical capacity of a single human being to push all those buttons, right? You hit a ceiling. When the system becomes too massive, you have to bring in enterprise-grade tools and ultimately machine intelligence.
That is the inevitable trajectory. Once you have an interconnected web of webhooks instantly passing data around, human reaction time actually becomes the new bottleneck.
Interesting.
To see how systems operate beyond human scale, we have to look at the Alteryx Server API v3 documentation included in the stack.
Yeah, this documentation is heavy. We aren't just sending text payloads anymore. We're dealing with enterprise workflows. It it discusses uploading YXZP packages, which, for the learner, are basically compressed digital briefcases containing an entire automated workflow and all its dependencies.
Exactly.
The API manages execution modes like safe, semi-safe, and standard. There is one highly technical parameter that really stands out: bypass workflow version check.
That specific parameter reveals a lot about enterprise philosophy, actually. Typically, if you try to upload a workflow that was built on a newer version of software than the server currently runs, the system will just reject it to prevent corruption or crashes. Version mismatches are dangerous.
But the documentation explicitly outlines how developers can set bypass workflow version check to true. It acts as a skeleton key. It forces the server to accept and execute the uploaded document, regardless of the environment mismatch.
It is a literal override switch. At the enterprise scale, ensuring a complex data pipeline executes on time is often more critical than maintaining pristine version parity. They need the pipeline to force its way through. Wow.
And establishing that level of deep programmatic API control is exactly the prerequisite for the next major evolution: AI agents.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Our sources point to a massive update in the Notion documentation regarding MCP, or the Model Context Protocol. This is the bridge we've been waiting for. MCP allows your workspace to directly connect to advanced AI tools like ChatGPT, Claude, and coding environments like Cursor.
Right. To appreciate MCP, you have to understand the limitation of standard AI. A normal language model just lives in a vacuum. You ask it a question, it generates text based on its training.
Like a super smart chatbot.
Exactly. But with the Model Context Protocol, the AI is granted a secure API key to actively read and write your structured content. It serves as a universal translator between human text and machine code. And to grasp the sheer momentum behind this, we just have to look at the GitHub repository, curated by Victor Bezdak in our stack. It's a curated list of awesome GitHub projects, boasting over 4,700 stars.
It's a massive list.
Yeah. The AI and machine learning category utterly dominates the list with over 600 projects. But the crucial detail is what those projects actually are. The community isn't starring simple chat interfaces anymore. They are starring AI agent tools.
Things like AutoG2T, Claude code plugins, and a particularly notable project called UiTars.
Let's break UiTars down, because this sounds straight out of science fiction.
Yeah.
It is designed to pioneer automated UI interaction.
Yes.
Meaning it physically looks at your screen, visually identifies the interface, and manipulates the mouse and keyboard to click buttons, just like a human operator would. It bridges the gap for software that doesn't even have a clean API.
It's wild. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are witnessing the arrival of agentic workflows. The AI is no longer a passive generator of essays.
Right.
Through enterprise tools like the Alteryx APIs, protocols like Notion's MCP, and visual agents like UiTars, the AI is becoming an active participant in your infrastructure.
Doing the work for you.
Exactly. It can read your workflow outlines to deduce your weekly goals. It can query your Notion databases to extract a client's specific billing history. And it can trigger your Make.com webhooks to issue the invoice entirely on your behalf.
All this time, we thought we were building these meticulously structured Notion dashboards and Zapier pipelines to make our own lives easier. But really, by forcing our messy thoughts into relational databases, by setting up structured webhooks, and by establishing clean APIs, we've actually been building legible interfaces for AI agents.
Spot on. An AI agent would completely fail if it tried to navigate that chaotic warehouse of sticky notes and whiteboards we described at the beginning. It lacks human intuition.
It wouldn't know where to start.
Exactly. But it can navigate a structured, API-connected database flawlessly. By organizing our digital brains to be perfectly logical, we inadvertently made them machine-readable.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? Let's just recap the journey we've taken through these sources. We started at the microscopic level, using the aggressive minimalism of a workflowy bullet point to isolate and capture a single thought.
Right.
We then moved outward into the highly structured, interconnected laboratory dashboard of Notion to manage complex, multifaceted projects. We learned how to bridge those isolated silos, moving past the clunky friction of 15-minute Zapier polling to achieve the instantaneous zero-code execution of webhooks.
The orchestrator phase.
Exactly. And finally, we saw how enterprise APIs and the Model Context Protocol allow us to hand the keys of that automated kingdom over to autonomous AI agents.
It is a fundamental evolution of how work gets done. You are evolving from the laborer of your data into the architect of the system that manages your data.
And as we wrap this up, that evolution presents a really fascinating paradox to think about. We spend spend so much time trying to eliminate the friction of work. We want instant webhooks, seamless APIs, and AI agents that handle all the messy organization for us.
Of course we do.
But what if that friction is actually a core component of human creativity? When you are forced to manually sift through your chaotic warehouse of notes, or spend time wrestling with how to categorize a new idea, you often stumble upon unexpected connections. You find old ideas you forgot about.
That's a really good point.
As these autonomous agents take over the administration of your digital life, stripping away all the friction and perfectly categorizing everything behind the scenes, do we risk losing the messy, accidental collisions of thought that actually lead to our best ideas?
That is the hidden cost of ultimate efficiency. When the machine does all the organizing, the human mind loses the opportunity to wander through its own archives.
Something to seriously mull over before you automate your next brainstorm. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.